All right, so welcome to How to Have an A-plus job interview. Again, for those of you that just joined, my name is Rachel White. I am the talent development facilitator with the North area for Rural Capital Area Workforce Solutions. So we're going to talk about the different techniques during the job interview process that you might be utilizing, okay? And also just making sure that we go over all of these things that are going to be helpful to you preparing for a job interview. So again, if you guys can just mute yourselves throughout this presentation, that would be great. We will do question and answers at the end. Okay, so today we're going to understand how to research and prepare for an interview. We're also going to practice common and difficult interview questions to reinforce qualifications. And I'm going to be talking about this a lot, you guys, when I'm going through this. But it's really important that you know that practice is the biggest part of getting ready for an interview. Practicing is going to put you head and shoulders above all of the other candidates, and it's really, really important, and I've come to find that a lot of people don't really practice and prepare for their interviews as much as they probably should, which leads to that, anxiety or nervousness when it comes into play and you actually go into the interview. So practicing is key, okay? Knowing how to make a positive first impression and properly close an interview. Also find out what to do after the interview. Okay, so we're going to be talking about all of these things, go over a lot of information today. Again, you'll get the workbook after this workshop is completed. So the key is to an interview. You need to look at the interview from the employer's perspective. I want to share this with you, something that I recently learned reading the book, What Color is Your Parachute 2020, and about how job seekers and employers view the job search process differently. Job seekers are worried about time. Okay, how fast can I get a job? Employers are worried about risk. Okay, so they are constantly assessing the risk that it's going to take for them to hire you. Okay, so everything from the recruitment process and looking at your resume to the interview process, all of that. Okay, so look at it from the employer's perspective and think about what they're really asking in the questions that they ask. And we're going to talk about that later, but look at it from the employer's view. Also, reinforce qualifications, assets, and good personality traits. That's so important. You have to constantly be reinforcing your qualifications within your resume when you're building that, and then also in your interview. So you have to know what your qualifications and your assets are before you even go into, again, writing that resume or going into that interview. Build a rapport with everyone on the interview panel. Okay, so you might have more than just a face-to-face, okay, one-on-one person conversation. And with virtual interviews, you may also have more than one person on the receiving end on the interview panel when you're having maybe, a Zoom meeting or a Skype interview, okay? So it's important to build rapport with everyone, and we're going to talk about these different types of interviews and kind of how to do that. All right, so there's basically 7 types of interviews, and I'm going to run through them so you're familiar with them and how they generally work, okay? But we all know that due to the current circumstances, virtual interviews are going to become really, really important, and practicing for virtual interviews. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So first, we have a phone interview, okay? So the pros for an employer are that they can screen candidates quickly. It also saves time and cost for everyone, and it can help identify candidates with good communication skills. It can easily include long-distance candidates as well. So, we all know that if you're in Dallas and you're applying for a job to Austin, that can be helpful. And a lot of times it's a pre-screening process. A lot of times I hear phone interviews, it's really just to do a pre-screening, okay? So you want to make sure that you're in a location where the call won't drop or have interference or interruptions, especially background noise and distractions. No, eye contact is kind of an issue here. If you're really used to the nonverbals and you're really good in a person-to-person setting, you know, you're going to have to practice your communication via the phone, okay, because they don't have any eye contact or other body language that can be read. It can be a little more difficult to build rapport or make that connection, right, because of that lack of face-to-face aspect. But again, it just depends on you and you know, how you present yourself over the phone, okay, or how you present yourself maybe like in this situation where you can hear me but not necessarily see me. So pay attention to the tone of your voice and the speed and all of those things. This is why you want to practice for each of these different kinds of interviews. So make sure you still dress for the interview, even though it's a phone interview. It will help with your confidence and put you in the right mindset. Make sure, and this goes for all interviews, that you review the job description again and the company website again prior to the call. Review your responses to your practice questions the morning of the call. Stay focused and have material ready for reference. You know, the good thing about a phone interview is that you can have all of these documents next to you to reference. Any notes, a list of questions, your resume, that's all a plus for you. So make sure that you prepare as much as possible. That will give you the upper hand, okay? Digital interviews, right? So the employer can view your responses to specific questions, specific position-related questions. And, you know, there's a couple of different types of digital interviews. One, there may be recorded questions already that you have to answer and respond to. Or two, you know, you're having to bring up video of yourself, and it's a one-way mirror, basically. You know, you're recording something for them, okay? It can save time and cost for everyone and help identify candidates with good communication and personal skills. And it can provide less pressure to candidates in some situations, okay? The problem sometimes can be that you have a limited think time before recordings begin. Okay, so you need to be prepared. There's no eye contact and body language that can be read really by either party. Difficult to build rapport or have small talk, okay? And again, it can be stressful if you're not used to it, if you're not used to working with anything digital. So again, I say, test it out as much as you can ahead of time, right? Do what you can and just be ready for that type of atmosphere. Okay, so read the instructions and take advantage of practice runs. And within your workbook, there's actually a link that you have under this digital interview section about how to prepare for digital interviews. It's from hireview.com. So please check out these links that you're going to get in your workbook afterwards. Okay. So you definitely, again, need to research the company and use the brand in your responses when appropriate. Pick a good location with favorable lighting. These are all tips related to anything digital or, you know, the virtual interview, which we'll talk about next. Okay, so video and Skype interviews. The pros: ability to see each other and read each other's body language. It will be different than this situation is now because you'll be able to see them and they'll be able to see you, okay? It is great because it saves time and cost for everyone, both the employer and the candidate. And right now with social distancing, it's really a safe way to conduct interviews, okay? And to be able to get that job. So you need to be focusing a lot on that. That may be how your next interview goes, okay? Again, it can also include long distance candidates. Some of the cons, which you might be aware of, and that I am certainly aware of, are possible technical issues with software, computers, or internet, right? Because, you know, we can have it prepared and then last minute something can happen, and employers will usually know that, you know, so don't get flustered or stressed out. Just deal with it and practice as much as you can with those technical programs and the virtual platforms like Skype or Zoom, however you have your meeting, okay? So some of the preparation and tips are setting up an account with this software and familiarizing yourself with the process. So again, if you're not familiar with Zoom, or Skype. You want to go in a couple of days or as much ahead of time as before and really get used to that platform. And most of those have free accounts, so you can ask a friend on the other end to participate with you and do a practice run. I strongly recommend that. I've done it many times with friends or other colleagues, just practicing our technology to make sure stuff works. So that is a great way to prepare. And again, you're going to want to pick a good location with favorable lighting, and definitely dress as if you're going to an in-person, face-to-face interview. All right. Panel interviews. That's another type of interview. And this one would include multiple people on the other end interviewing you. Okay, so you against maybe 3 or 4 potential interviewers. So it could be your hiring manager and your human resource manager and maybe your direct report. It could be, a project manager or something. So again, with this, it's a little bit easier because you're also able to be in that person-to-person atmosphere, but you want to make sure during this especially that you are building that rapport with each interviewer, okay? And the way that I say this to practice is to really, you be at home, one side of the table, and grab a couple of your family members or a couple of friends to help you. You can set up your stuffed animals if you want, okay? But you just practice giving attention to each person. So they'll ask you a question and directing your eye contact and dispersing it evenly throughout the 3 or 4 people as you're answering it. Don't focus specifically on one person when you're giving your answer. And so if this is hard for you, if this is something that you feel that you need to work on, make sure that you do this, okay? And learn to practice distributing your eye contact, okay? So some of the pros for this is that it reduces the part of bias on the interviewers because you've got multiple people's perspective coming into play, okay? And you've got the opportunity to gain different perspectives of the position and the company from different people when you're asking your questions during the interview. And you have the opportunity to meet multiple people that will be with you on your team. Some of the cons really would be the risk of the interviewers not agreeing on a candidate, but that usually won't happen in front of you, so you won't be dealing with that, okay? And if you're intimidated by multiple people looking at you at one time, 1 versus 3 or 1 versus 4, again, this is just going to come from practice, okay? And I actually particularly like panel interviews. I've done them quite a few times, and again, the more you interview, the more you can practice. So again, make sure you try to do a mock interview, practice with a couple of people and make sure that you prepare your success stories and behavioral question responses. We will talk about this later, okay? Group interviews. Group interviews are really where you are one of multiple candidates in the room with the people who are interviewing, okay? And so some of the pros for this are that it is a good icebreaker, and for the employer, they can assess team building and other skills kind of all at the same time. On the other hand, it could be more difficult to obtain attention from managers just to be interacting with you, right? So you kind of lose that one-on-one or the attention is all on you. They're trying to assess multiple people in the room at one time, okay? And, some people perform more individually, and this can kind of create a competitive environment, all right? So you just need to be aware that that may be what you're stepping into when you go into a group interview. And these usually take about an hour to an hour and a half, and maybe involve group or teamwork activities. So make sure that I've seen this in retail environments. I've actually gone through one of these before. Make sure that you are aware of your skill set, okay, and you're ready to work in teams if need be, okay? And then we've got one-on-one interviews, which everybody is familiar with, going in and one-on-one individually meeting with an employer, okay? And the really great thing about these is again, it's one-on-one. It's easier to build rapport and read body language, okay, from the other end. Well, both ends, really. They can read it from you and vice versa. An employer can gain an assessment of the candidate's qualifications. But sometimes these interviews can be costly for the employer. Again, right now with social distancing, we may see less and less of these. You getting called into an office situation, we don't know for how long, but this may be happening less and less. And sometimes candidates can be nervous and it affects their interview. So it's really important with panel interviews, group interviews, and one-on-ones that you make sure that you practice your communication, whether, we're talking verbal and non-verbal, okay? Body language. So again, you can practice with mock interviews for this and prepare your responses and just make sure you're aware of body language and appearance and practicing eye contact. And these usually last about 45 minutes and you get more personal and focused attention. Okay, lastly, the last type of interview we're going to go over is assessment days. Okay, so these would involve, you going and it's kind of like a trial run, and you're going to an employer and you participate maybe for half the day or a day in doing, kind of like practicing working on the job, right? Or they give you certain tasks to do and complete. So the great thing for them is they get to assess the skills essential for the position and see that you can complete everything successfully. It's really good for recent graduates. They usually do this out of college as well. And then employers can also evaluate a large pool of candidates for specific skills. They can see how people work in this actual work environment, okay? The problem is it can be very competitive because, again, you're not having that one-on-one personalized focused attention with the employer, and that you may be nervous in that type of situation. So again, building your teamwork skills and working in teams for those kinds of positions are going to be really critical when you go to that interview. So you want to make sure that you stay current on software and any technology associated with the position, and again, be prepared to exhibit those skills on something like an assessment day, okay? All right, so those are the types of interviews. Again, if you have specific questions at the end, we will address those in the Q&A session, but just drop me a chat while we're going through this as well. You can drop me a message at any time. Okay, so researching the organization is critical, and this is something I talk about especially before writing a resume and cover letter as well. You have to research the organization and know about them before you can go into the interview. You want to study labor market information and know your value ahead of time, okay? This comes down to salary negotiation, and not necessarily that you'll have to do salary negotiation during the interview, but just so you're prepared. You can learn about the employer through your networking contacts, right? Utilize online resources for information and reviews. Learn about the position and study the company history, their blog or news feeds, and determine what you can do to fill the employer's needs. It's going to be, again, very critical that you start taking advantage of this digital technology, okay? All of these tools like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Facebook, okay? The internet, right? And research organizations. And really throughout any part of your job search process, you're gonna have to use these digital tools. So LinkedIn, Facebook, it's a great way to get an idea of the company culture, right? So you can understand what their culture is and build a mutual connection between yourself and that employer before you go in that interview. Because you really can't have a conversation about the company or be excited about working there if you don't know what they're about. So make sure you go on, and Glassdoor is a great one as well for looking at salaries and kind of getting to know more about the company as well. So Very, very critical that you do that, not only when you're researching for your resume and cover letter, but again, when they call you in for that interview. It will also have a list of websites in your workbook that I mentioned as well, so don't feel like you have to try to remember where all of those are. They'll be listed there as well. Okay, so deciding what to wear to an interview. All right, and I'm going to go over this because sometimes people don't understand, business professional versus business casual, right? And you want to research to find out what would be appropriate for that type of interview. However, I will say dressing more professional, business professional, is better initially. Even if you're overdressed, than say doing business casual and you walk in there and you're underdressed. So make sure that you understand, business professional versus business casual for you. And there is in your workbook business casual versus business professional examples for both men and women. Okay. So in business professional, you're going to have probably a traditional business suit in colors like blue, black, brown, navy, white. Okay. Button down long sleeve dress shirts, traditional business ties. For men, colored socks and appropriate accessories. For women, this could be a business suit or blazer, right, with a long skirt. Okay. With any shirt with any dress or skirt, hosiery is usually considered business professional, and just business professional footwear. Okay. Business casual, for men, you might have collared shirts, dress slacks in solid colors. Okay, no tie is required for that. If you want to go somewhere in between business professional and business casual, you can put on a tie, but that's, kind of a difference there. For women, it might be cardigan sweaters or blouses with subtle patterns or solid colors, right? Skirts and dresses with a knee-length hem, slacks, mixing and matching skirts and blazers, okay? But, I always say black is a really good choice, black and white or black and neutral colors when you're going into an interview. And then after that, you can really know and get an idea of what the rest of the company does. But just make sure, I always say business professional is a little bit safer to go on when you're doing the interview process. But there will be a chart of all of these examples in your workbook. Okay, so what to bring to an interview? These are really critical, and if you're not used to doing this, I would definitely take note, okay? A list of 3 to 5 references. In my How to Create Effective Resumes and Cover Letters workshop, we talk about how to build a reference list. So please come to that. I'll have another one later this month that you can join in on if you need help with that. But it's really important to go ahead and have your references just in case an employer asks for them, okay? You're not necessarily just giving it to them, but if they're requested, you have them already. Extra copies of your resume. This is probably the most critical, okay? It doesn't matter if you know that the employer is already going to have one of your resumes in front of them. You need to have extra copies of your resume. I would honestly print out and paperclip 4 of them in case it's a panel interview. And you would automatically give them, here's another copy of my resume. I just wanted to make sure that you had it. And you would pull that out whenever you get into the interview. Questions to ask the employer. A lot of people miss this. A lot of people don't ask questions of the employer during their interview. And I want to tell you something really important, is that the interview is not only for the employer to interview you, but you are also interviewing them, okay? People think it's always, they're on the defensive and they're having to, tiptoe around the employer, but you're also trying to find a job that's going to suit you, right? So make sure that you bring questions. I say minimum of 5, okay? We'll talk about a list of questions later that you can possibly ask the employer, but it is really, really, really important that you ask these questions during your interview, during that time, maybe at the end when they say, do you have any questions for me? You're going to want to absolutely have those questions. Bring pen and paper in a portfolio. Okay, so you can have your portfolio with all of these documents in it and have pen and paper just in case. Work samples are optional. That would depend on you and your particular job and if you think you would need those or not. And pay attention when they do your interview invite. Maybe they say something in an email that you need to bring, or other copies of documents that the employer has requested. Okay, and also a smile. You know, you want to project that really positive energy when you're going into an interview to set it off on the right foot. Okay, make sure that you're positive. It's all about the positive with the interviews. Okay, so dealing with interview fear, and I'm going to talk about this because, again, practice makes perfect. And I just always stress this because, you know, even if you go on an interview and you don't get the position, that was still practice for you. So you know what to do better next time, okay? So review the job description, like I said, and make a list of questions the employer may ask. We are going to talk about some of these common interview questions, ones that you should definitely be prepared for. You're going to want to prepare success stories and behavioral responses using the STAR and Experience, Learn, Grow method. Okay, we're going to talk about what each one of those are, but you're going to have to think of success stories that you have from your previous positions, right? Things you've accomplished, and have these ready. And the big problem is people don't practice their responses to any kinds of questions. So when they're asked them, they're having to scramble for a response. And, you know, there's no way that you can possibly know what every employer is going to ask, but you want to prepare as much as possible. Again, practice to decrease nervousness while increasing confidence. So let's talk about so we're going to also train to listen carefully to determine the question behind the question. We will go over some of those questions that seem kind of obscure that you might be thinking, okay, what do they really mean by this? Create a list of difficult questions for yourself and practice your responses out loud, okay? Write down some difficult questions that you think are particularly hard for you. That could be different for every person. We'll talk about some of those in a little while as well. And then practice with someone else or on your own in front of a mirror. You know, even if you're just talking to the air, just practice your responses out loud. Okay, so behavioral questions and answering those with the STAR method. So there are behavioral questions in interviews and there are skills-based. A lot of employers are asking behavioral type questions nowadays, okay, to get more of an idea of different characteristics about you, like how you deal with conflict, how do you work in teams, you know, versus just hard skills-based questions that you have experience with. And they ask these a lot more to help understand how you'll fit into their company culture. So questions typically start out with, tell me a time when you did ... or how did you execute this project? Or, you know, what is an example of a time when, you know, etc. And so this is what I mean by preparing these stories. Go ahead and write down on a piece of paper, tell me about a time when you know, helped solve a problem, helped save the company money, help deal with a conflict with a coworker, okay? Those are the kinds of things. Prepare at least 6 brief success stories using each method and emphasize what you did and how you made a difference. Your past behavior predicts future success. So they're trying to see how you worked through certain problems or how you accomplished something. That's going to give them a good indication of how it will go in the future. And you will gain extra points when they're impressed with your stories. And if you already have these, you know, it worded out and you've already, like, you don't have to think and you don't have to say and you don't have to do any of that, then it looks like you're confident and you already know the answer to these questions. You can also use the Experience, Learn, Grow model. Okay, so this is another method for answering these type of questions. Okay, And so you can prepare your responses using, one, your experience. Summarize the situation from your past. Okay, what was this experience? What was the situation? Learn, what did the situation teach you? Grow, discuss what you learned and how you will become a more valuable employee. So what was the type of situation? What was the experience? Share what the situation taught you, and then discuss what you learned and how you'll be a more valuable employee. Because this happened, I am now able to do this, right? So there is a really great video by JT O'Donnell, and she explains the experience, learn, grow model. And this is actually going to be, the link is in your workbook as well. It's a very short video. We can go ahead and check it out right now. And I am
Working daily by JT, and this is the channel that helps with illustration. So today I'm going to be talking about how to answer any question that you have. And what I'm going to say is
okay, guys, sorry, somebody's having trouble with audio, so I'm going to, I guess y'all can't hear it. So give me 1 second and I will fix that.
More than a one-word answer. So it's the type of question where you're not going to respond just yes or no. You're actually going to have to get into a whole-on conversation in order to deliver the answer. It's the kind of open-ended question you'd get with something like, tell me about a time when, or explain to me when you had to do this or that. And you're going to see these questions all the time because it helps the hiring manager get inside your head and understand how you tackle certain problems, how you approach them. Remember, an employer wants to make sure that you're the right fit for the job. It's not just that you have the experience, but it's also that you have the aptitude and the know-how to apply that experience so that you could do the job the way that you need to do it for them to feel comfortable in hiring you. So that all has to come out in your answer, and that's why they focus in on behavioral questions to do that. So now that you understand what a behavioral interview question is and why it's so important to answer it thoroughly and correctly, I'm going to give you a methodology you can use to answer each and every one effectively. It's called the Experience, Learn, and Grow model, and it's a system that we've designed that allows you to come up with an answer that's going to give the employer exactly what they need to hear. So let me explain what the Experience, Learn, and Grow model means. Step one is for you to outline an experience that you've had that explains that you can do what they're asking you to do. Next, you're going to talk about what you learned from that experience, how it made you smarter and better in your job. And then finally, you're going to talk about how you grew as a professional so that you can take that experience and use it to your advantage going forward. When you answer questions using the Experience, Learn, and Grow model, you're mentally taking the hiring manager through the process they need to go through to come to the conclusion that you can do the job. Now, before I move on and give you an example of how to use the Experience, Learn, and Grow methodology, I want to remind you that it's also important that you ask good questions in an interview as well in order to make a great impression. So we've got a great video on that I think you should check out. It's a must-see for anyone that's in the interview stage. It's called 8 Smart Questions You Should Be Asking Hiring Managers in Interviews. And I promise you that it's a total game changer. All right, let's move on and give you an actual example. Okay, so a typical behavioral question that you might get asked in your next interview is, tell me your greatest accomplishment on the job. Now, again, if we are going to use the Experience, Learn, and Grow model here, we have to share enough information for them to fully understand that we are capable of doing the job. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're a customer service rep. Your answer might be, well, as a customer service rep, the greatest accomplishment I ever had was learning how to deal with difficult customers. I remember a time when I got a call from a really angry customer. We had double charged her and she was irate. She was swearing at me and yelling at me at the phone. She was completely out of control and I didn't know what to do. But I realized that if I stepped back for a second and didn't take it personally what she was saying, and knowing that it wasn't directed at me, I could recognize how she was feeling. I could put myself in her shoes. And so I was able to do that. And in doing so, I was able to calmly address her needs, figure out what was going on, get her a credit, really exceed her expectations. When it was all said and done at the end, she was totally calmed down. She was apologetic for her behavior, for swearing at me. And most importantly, she was grateful. And she even gave me a 4-star review afterwards. That really taught me the power of patience and empathy when I'm talking to customers. And now going forward, every time I get a difficult customer, I'm able to immediately go into that empathy mode so that I can give them a great customer service experience. Do you see how we followed the experience, learn, and grow model there? By taking the time to map out your answers to questions like this, you can really make sure that you're covering your bases and helping that hiring manager understand just how effective you can be in the job. Now, there are lots of behavioral questions that you can get asked in an interview. In fact, at WSRCA Daily, we have a list of 21 of them that we take our clients through. But to give you an idea of some other ones that you might come across, here are 3 that you should be prepared to answer. So the first one might be, tell me about a difficult situation and how you overcame it. A second one might be, what would your coworkers say about you if we asked them? And a third might be, tell me about a time when you got a difficult and unrealistic request from somebody, but they were really enthusiastic about it. What did you do? Those are just a few examples of the types of behavioral questions you can get asked that really require more than a one-word answer. And most importantly, to follow that experience, learn, and grow structure so that you can deliver the right answer at the right time. Now, for some of you might be watching this and saying, gee, JT, I just wish I could get the interviews. And if that's the case, I just want to tell you about a resource that we have that really can help you in your job search process. In fact, if you check in the description link below here or maybe up above, I've linked to this free resource that we've built that's really going to show you all the places that you may be holding yourself back in the job search process that's not getting you those interviews that you want and you deserve. So it's totally free. I hope you'll check it out. It really can help you get a better perspective on what job search looks like today and help you remove the roadblocks and the mistakes that you're probably making and you don't even know it. So did you enjoy today's video? Do you have questions, comments, concerns, feedback? Well, I want to hear from you. So please make sure that you share them in the comment section below.
Okay, guys. So really, really great video there. And I really encourage you to go check out workitdaily.com. It's a great free resource. Can everybody hear me okay? It's a great free resource for you to go and access to learn more about resume tips, interview tips, okay? JT has really great strategies, but you know, really practicing your responses, because if they ask you these questions during an interview and you don't even know the situation off the top of your head that you would think of and start to construct your answer, then you're going to be spending a lot of time, you know, wondering, hey, am I giving the right answer? What, you know, is this the correct thing? So just make sure that you're preparing, okay? And this is a great video to check that out on, okay? All right.
Okay. And also, if you didn't already,
all right, so first impressions matter. This is really important, okay, but I think we all realize this. And again, with social distancing and how things have changed with the current pandemic and everything that we're going through, first impressions may look a little bit different if you're doing, obviously, a virtual interview. But you're always going to want to make sure that you energize the interview by having a friendly smile, okay? And that you're using appropriate nonverbal communication to thank the interviewers for their time at the beginning and the end, you know, and that's really important, thanking them at the beginning and the end, okay? So let's look at this chart about percentages for first impressions, okay? So in a survey of 2,000 bosses, 33% claim that they knew within the first 90 seconds of an interview whether they will hire someone. So that's really important, okay? Common nonverbal mistakes that are made at a job interview, like 21%, they said employers were playing with someone's hair or playing with their hair or touching the face. 47% said having little or no knowledge of the company was off-putting, okay? 67% failure to make eye contact, 38% lack of smile, 33% bad posture, 21% crossing arms over their chest, 9% using too many hand gestures, 26% handshake that is too weak, 33% fidgeting too much. So you can see how all of these nonverbal cues make a difference, and they will make a difference also when you're doing a Zoom or a Skype interview, okay? So make sure that you practice these also. And just a tip, you know, a lot of times we're looking right at our computer screen when we're doing a virtual interview or meeting, but you want to be looking at the camera lens up at the top, you know, the circular part on your computer, because that is actually where they're going to come in. You're going to come into focus on their end. So make sure that you're doing that. So all of these nonverbals and these other first impressions matter. Okay. So determining what the question is behind the questions, and you get into this atmosphere with the employer, with the interviewer. Okay. So you want to listen carefully to determine what the employer wants to know. Respond with information that reinforces your qualifications and add examples as needed. And prepare for the unexpected during the interview. Again, there are lists of questions that we're going to show you today that you can practice all day long, and that will give you a leg up, but you never know what you could possibly be asked. So prepare for that, right? So let's talk about some of these questions behind the question. 1, like, why are you interested in this company? What the employer might be saying is, what the question might be asking is, what do you know about the company that you're applying for? All right. So the employer wants to know why you want to work at their company rather than their competitors. To answer this effectively, you have to do research on the company and know why they would be a good place to work. Okay. Another one, what can you do for this company? The question might be really asking, how will you benefit the company if you're hired? The employer wants to know that you have the skills to complete the task for the open position. They want to know if you'll be a positive or negative addition to the team that they've already established. To answer this, you have to know what position you're applying for and what's required for that position. So that goes back to reviewing that job description. Okay, guys, this is a tip that I give in effective job search strategies, but just, you know, side note here, when you're applying for a job, make sure that you are organized and you keep files, right? Whether that's on your computer or physical files, like a printout or a document of the job description, copy and paste it and keep it, okay? The resume that you actually submitted for that job. Remember, you're customizing resumes per the job you're applying for, so you want to keep that resume handy and have it in the file that you use so you can print it out again and use it in the interview. Any cover letter or additional documents, you know, the application that you filled out, anything. So put all of that together in a file. So then you can go back and review. All right, another kind of question, what kind of person are you? So they might be asking, what about your work personality, your habits, your assets? Okay. So the employer wants to know what your character is and what kind of personality you have. Do your values match the company values? You have to know what your assets are and be able to communicate those using examples from your past. So today, you know, I encourage you guys to sit down and think about your past work experience. Think about these behavioral-based questions and how you would come up to responses for them, okay? And really, really narrow down. And if you have to write down a list, you know, what are your assets? What are your qualifications and your skills? You have to know what those are. Another one, what sets you apart from everyone else interested in this position? So the question might be asking, what makes you unique and more qualified than any other? And I've gotten that question before, like, why are you the best person for this job? And it throws you off. But this again comes back to knowing how you're qualified and being confident about it, okay? Another one, they might ask, can I afford the risk of hiring you? Because, you know, some employers are just blunt and they come out with those questions because they want to get answers, right? And so they're asking about risk, reliability, and salary. So again, we talked about how employers are concerned about risk at the beginning. They have a great deal to lose if they hire the wrong person. They're trying to save both time and money by determining if you're worth the risk or not. Are your assets and skills worth what the job pays? If you're overqualified for the position, will the employer be able to afford your talent? If hired, will you quit at the first sign of conflict? So they're trying to determine all of these things. So again, these lists of questions and this explanation will be given to you in your workbook. So you don't have to worry about jotting everything down. You'll receive this at the end. Okay, so let's talk about common interview questions. I'm telling you guys that tell me about yourself is one of the most common interview questions that are asked, but most of the time people get them wrong. They don't know how to answer them. And after this workshop, I'm going to send you a link to a video about how to answer the tell me about yourself question, because it is so important. You know, I've done a mock job interview with someone in the past, and they answered everything perfectly except that one because they don't know how to answer it. And when you walk into an interview, you're typically going to hear this. Okay? Prepare ahead of time by developing your own personal branding statement that clearly tells, you know, who you are and what your major strengths are. Employers want to know about you and your background and your skills. And I always say at the end, add something like a little personal, like, and I enjoy golf or something. You want to be really careful about this because you don't want to go into, well, I have 4 kids and yada, yada, yada. Okay. But you want to make sure that you do have like a little personal thing at the end so they can kind of get, you know, it's a talking point and they can get to know you. They also want to see how well you present yourself and how well you'll fit into their workplace and culture. When you respond to this question, share positive personal information and work history that will show you'll be a good fit for the position and the company. Okay? So an inappropriate response for this would be, there's not much to tell. I need a job to pay my bills and you guys are right around the corner. So that is not a good response example. Okay? Something like, I've lived in the community for the last 10 years and have worked in the food service industry for the last 3. In my spare time, I enjoy spending time with my family and volunteering at the food pantry. I guess you can say I'm a people person because I like getting out and helping others. Okay, so something short and quick. Usually from what I've read, after about 1.5 minutes of a response time, employers are starting to lose interest. And your tell me about yourself should not be that long anyway, about 30 seconds, okay? Another common interview question, why do you want to work for this company? Okay, again, comes down to researching the company before the interview so you can explain why you want to work there. What is your mutual connection? What do you love about it? What are you excited about? An inappropriate response for this would be like, I heard you pay well and offer good employee discounts, okay? So that shows that you're only interested in what's good for you and all of those benefits, right? So that's not a good example. So an appropriate example might be, I want this job because it seems tailored to my competencies, which include sales and marketing. As I said earlier, in a previous position, I created an annual growth rate of 22% in a flat industry. Additionally, I am excited about the opportunity. Okay, so there's multiple ways that you can do this, but you have to know something about them. You have to have a connection to really be invested, and it will show when you're doing your interview. Okay, so what are your greatest strengths? You know, we always get that. Name one of your greatest strengths and one of your greatest weaknesses, okay? But sometimes we take our strengths for granted and we don't want to brag about them. However, this is the place and this is the time to promote the assets that you have that relate to the job you're applying for. So you need to use this opportunity to showcase your qualifications and skills. So a good example of this would be, my time management skills are detailed and excellent. I'm organized, efficient, and take pride in excelling at my work. You could also say, I pride myself on my customer service skills and my ability to resolve what could be difficult situations, right? So picking out what your greatest strength would be related to that job. So preferably one of their requirements or preferences, how can you really sell that to them that that's one of your greatest strengths? Okay, what is your greatest weakness? Never admit a weakness without turning it into a strength. That's kind of the best way to do it. And online, there are a lot of good articles about how to address this as well. You can just Google how to answer what is your greatest weakness question. And I'm telling you, the internet is going to be your friend right now, and anything on YouTube that helps with these types of skills. There are so many videos out there that you can watch. But you need to analyze the key skills and strength required for the position you're interviewing for, and then come up with an honest shortcoming. But it's a shortcoming that's not essential for success in that job, okay? So for example, if you're applying for a nursing job, you might share that you're not particularly adept at conducting group presentations. In this case, it'll be critical to underscore your strength in one-to-one communication with patients while providing an example of your difficulty with presentations to large groups. Because as a nurse, you're probably not going to have to make presentations, so that might be a weak spot. So something that doesn't directly relate to the job duties or requirements for that job, okay? What are your goals for the future? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Okay, so even if you know that you're going to be retiring, you never say that, okay? Even if you know that you're not going to be there, don't say that. And really, we all don't know where we're going to be for sure in 5 years. So the best way to respond to this question is to refer to the position and the company that you're interviewing for, okay? Don't discuss your goals for returning to school or having a family, like I said, or if you're retiring, that aren't relevant, okay? Though you may not know exactly what you'll be doing in the near or far future, answer in terms of how that job fits in with your current plans. Remember, if your answer indicates no connection with this job or this company, the employer may not think you're the right person for it. So a good response might be, I hope to start a career here with XYZ company. My goal is to apply myself and learn more about the company. Eventually, within the next 3 to 5 years, I would like to receive additional training, take on more responsibility, and earn a promotion. Okay? Or I see myself as a top performing employee in a well-established organization. This industry is my passion. I plan on enhancing my skills and continuing my involvement in such and such professional associations. You see how that kind of connects, but you're not saying, well, definitely in 5 years I'm going to be so-and-so or I'm moving on, right? You have to be able to answer the questions just enough and then stop, okay? A lot of times what happens with people is that they answer the interview questions, they just keep going and going, and it kind of just kills it. It kind of just, they've said too much, right? So make sure that you're practicing these, okay? Also, give me an example of a time when you ... And this is going to be really important, again, to use that STAR or experience, learn, grow method, okay? And there are a couple of examples in your workbook on how to answer this with a breakdown of that experience, learn, grow model. Okay, what has been your most significant achievement? So you need to choose an achievement that is related to the position and is pretty, recent and relevant, okay? If it wasn't in your last job, but maybe the job before, that might be okay, right? Review the job description and look at what skills are listed as necessary for the job. This will guide you to the most relevant answer for this employment interview question. Describe your accomplishment and highlight the job-related skills you used. Point out how the results benefited the company and the team, okay? So here's an example. Recently, I was asked to implement a new system to reduce customer wait time. I monitored the flow of the current system, got input from all of the staff involved, and developed a faster way of getting the customer in and out by redistributing the duties according to skill set. This increased our productivity by 20%. Okay, so not a very long-winded answer, but it's a really good specific answer packed with quantitative information, it's results based. What did you do and what was the result of it? Another question might be, why should I hire you? Again, this kind of goes into, why are you the most qualified for the job? Why you, right? So again, but it's about what you can do for the company. Your response to this question should give a sincere and enthusiastic summary of your qualifications and your interest in the job, okay? The best way to respond is to give concrete examples of why your skills and accomplishments make you the best candidate for the job. So there's multiple different appropriate response examples within your workbook, okay? But one might be, I have great people skills and great customer service skills. I have years of experience in the whatever industry. I am a very friendly and outgoing person and have always been the go-to for the office. I'm very neat, organized, and reliable. I'm a quick learner and I always have a positive attitude, okay? So highlighting your really positive skills and strengths. Another difficult question, number 9, how do you handle stress and pressure? This is common, but it can be difficult to address when you're kind of caught off guard. And managing stress in the workplace has become common, okay, as common as managing productivity. Employers want to know how you would typically respond to pressure-filled situations. Again, they're trying to assess how you would work in certain circumstances. So an example is maybe stress is different in every work situation at some time. The appropriate way to deal with stress is to make sure I have the correct balance between good stress and bad stress. I need good stress to stay motivated and productive. Okay, so practice your genuine, honest answer of how you would deal with this, okay, and what tactics you would use. Number 10, how would your last boss and or coworker describe you? Okay, so think about your relationship with others that you've worked with in your team in the past. Okay, what did you learn on your last job? How well did you perform? You might worry what your boss would say if you didn't learn the new computer system quickly enough. However, this is an opportunity to focus on the positive. Again, guys, you want to focus on the positive. It's positive. All right. The best answer to this question is to say that they would describe you as a pleasant person who works well with others. Okay, and you can put forth other traits as well. Okay, so for example, my supervisor and colleagues have described me as a dependable worker. The manager appreciated that I prioritized tasks and managed my responsibilities so that she could rely on me. Regional managers tell me I have a sixth sense for sales and I learn new information and procedures quickly. These skills account for my 2 promotions in 3 years. My boss was also impressed by how I was able to lead my team into a higher sales margin. Okay, again, results-based. Questions for the employer. Okay, and guys, sorry, back to common interview questions. There is a list of these in your workbook, okay, and I would suggest highly that you write them out and practice your responses. You get a list of about 47 different questions, I believe, that I'm going to send you, and it will have, these different types, and I would just write them down and work on them, okay? Questions for the employer. Ask a minimum of 3 questions to find out information that hasn't been discussed, and that's why I say go in with at least 5 questions or 6, because you never know, they could answer one of your questions while you're in the interview, okay? But once they get to the end of asking questions, they're going to say, do you have any questions for me? And you absolutely, every time, want to have questions for them, okay? If you say, no, I don't, it's going to come off as, you know everything already, or, you're not really that interested, or, you're not showing initiative. So make sure that you've come up with a different list of examples, okay? And avoid asking questions that can be found online or in the job description. So it's okay to ask, when do you expect to make a hiring decision? What do you expect the person you hire to accomplish in the first 30 to 60 days? What do you like about working here? So turning it and asking the manager. You could also ask other things like, what is your performance review process like? You know, I think that's really important. What do you value the most in your team? You know, there's all kinds of things, because again, guys, you're interviewing them too. You want to know if you're going to be happy there as well. It's not a one-way street, and you might find out from the interview that, oh, you know, this may not be for me. Okay, so it's really important, and I'm sure that everybody's kind of had that circumstance before where they're like, I wish I would have asked these questions in my last job or last position before I started. I wish I had known these things. So make sure that you take that time to ask, okay? Answering difficult questions, okay? So these require a prepared response, and I want you to make sure that you, again, practice and write these down prior to. So if you've been terminated, or, you know, they ask about, you know, a background check or gaps in work history when you're presenting your resume, okay, have a response prepared for that. But like in terms of a disability, if you have a disability and you don't want to disclose it because you don't need to, okay, you know, you don't have to. If you have a visible disability, you may benefit by giving an explanation of how you're able to do this job. Again, guys, you always want to be on the positive, okay? If you were fired, it can be a struggle, and there are different articles online too that will cover this, but you need to practice your response. So maybe a new manager came in and reorganized various departments. Many positions were eliminated at that time, and I'm looking for my next opportunity and was excited when I found this one. Or my competencies weren't the right match for my previous employer's needs, but it looks like they'd be a good fit in your organization. You know, you're not lying. You just don't need to say every single detail, okay? Again, when you go past answering the question and you just keep going and going, you know, that can be when it hinders you, right? So if you have an arrest or misdemeanor felony conviction, okay, you can explain it. And you can research employers who are friendly with convictions, but you can say, you know, this conviction was blah, you know, X amount of months or years ago. I made mistakes in the past, but I would say, look at what I have done since then. You know, and again, flipping it to a positive light, answering the question and moving on and presenting yourself in a positive way. Okay, so these examples are in your workbook as well. Salary negotiation. Okay, there are a lot of great YouTube videos about salary negotiation. Okay, guys, and I'm telling you, YouTube is a great resource. But you usually want to be the first to, you want to avoid being the first to mention salary, okay? But it's really important to already know, walking into that interview, what your fair market value is, okay, based on what employers currently pay. And this is looking at labor market information, okay? If you're not familiar with what labor market information is, I do talk about it in other workshops that I have, and we can discuss it more if you would like to at the end. But labor market information is really trends, statistics, data about the workforce, okay? And on workintexas.com, you can find out for your particular area or county what the fair labor market value is for the particular industry or occupation that you're looking at, okay? And that helps you make a good salary negotiation argument, right? You can't always go based off of what you made before. You have to look at what is current fair market value. So that's really, really important. And again, labor market information is something I can get into with you later if you have questions, okay? But know what the realistic salary range is and always negotiate if possible. All right. And salary negotiation may not come up in an interview, it'd probably be after, but just be ready for it in case. Okay. So this is something also talking about where you can look. So Texas Labor Market Information, LMCI, is somewhere that you can go and look. Glassdoor, LinkedIn, and again, workintexas.com. So Rural Capital Headlight as well is specifically built for our board area. So it includes all of the counties within our rural capital area. And that's 9 counties: Williamson, Hayes, Burnett, Llano, Blanco, Fayette, Caldwell, Lee. I think I got all 9, but it's got all 9 on here. And it's really great. It's a great tool, and it will give you a bunch of statistics and data for the workforce in our area, and you can really see what's going on. All right, closing the interview. So make sure you thank the interviewers again for their time at the beginning and the end. Let them know that you want to be considered for the next step in the hiring process. And mention specific reasons why you hope to be selected. And this would just probably be like, you know, you're closing with them. It's not anything that you have to necessarily map out, but be prepared of how you would like to close that conversation, especially, you know, after you've done the research on the company and you're really invested and you want to join that company. Post interview, make sure you send a thank you letter, email, or LinkedIn message with a contact request. So make sure that you connect, ask for their connection on LinkedIn. Super important. I talk about connecting with recruiters on LinkedIn, I believe, in my effective job search strategies workshop. And so how to connect with employers, hiring managers, recruiters, what have you. But once you've been in that seat with them, you know, you've made this connection. So make it on social media as well. Make plans to follow up. Keep your name fresh, respectfully. So you can follow up via LinkedIn, but also be very careful that you're not being too aggressive with it as well. Prepare for the job offer and practice salary negotiation. And of course, continue your job search. So never get hung up on, oh, this is the job, I did great. You know, you may have done great, but just keep going. Do your job search. Continue to do that. Okay. So in your workbook that you're going to get a couple of samples of thank you letters. All right, an email sample and a regular letter sample. And again, we're also going to give you an additional document that has some common interview questions in it as well. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions now.